Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Baumhauer's Victory Grill. I'm Eli Gold from the Tuscaloosa News. Cecil Hurt alongside the coach, just about now pulling up out in front of the restaurant. He'll be with us in a moment. The Nick Saban Show presented by Alpha Insurance for auto, home, and life insurance. Call Alpha. And I think that introduction to the show was very much spot on. You know, all of these convoluted possibilities of stuff that can happen. It's all predicated on Alabama having to defeat the Auburn Tigers on Saturday.
I'm going to let you ask all the salient playoff questions.
I think I'll pass. Thank you very much. But
I'm not going to ask them. And to be perfectly honest, probably the one person who cares less about it than Coach Saban does is me, because the year's not over. You can't evaluate it.
Exactly. As you can gather, the applause for Coach Nick Saban, who makes his way into the restaurant here. A good crowd, as always, on hand for this. And this is going to be our final Nick Saban show of the season. This year, obviously, seems to have flown right by, but it's great to have the coach with us as he gets himself settled up here on the stage. Coach, good evening, sir. Good to see you.
Good. I'm doing great. Good to see you. I'd like to wish everybody out there a happy holiday and happy Thanksgiving tomorrow. And
definitely,
you know, this is a great holiday for us to all show a little gratitude and be thankful for all the things that we have. I know we spend a lot of time thinking about things we want and things that we don't have, but you know, I guess this is a time to really appreciate all the things that you do have.
And you know, if I may inject something from our little network here, as well, you know, a member of our crew has been hospitalized and been battling illness all season long, Chris Stewart. And I'm thrilled to say that Chris was released today and he is back home. He has rehabilitation yet to do, but I can only imagine the thanks that is being shared by the family and the children and Chris. I couldn't have heard a better piece of news today.
Well, that's wonderful news. You know, it's great for him. He's been a great part of the program here, and we certainly have missed him all year long, but we're also encouraged that he's doing better. And what better thing for him to be able to do than join his family for Thanksgiving? That's really special for everybody.
It really is. So, Chris, we look forward to seeing you really soon at the basketball games and baseball and everything else. So just keep working hard. Cecil Hurt, as always, you know the routine. Feel free to jump in and get us going for the night.
I was curious if you had ever, collegiately or in your years in the NFL, played a game on Thanksgiving Day, had a Thanksgiving Day game.
Yeah, several. Probably one of my most memorable games was when I was at the Cleveland Browns with Belichick, and we played Dallas in Dallas on Thanksgiving Day. Mm-hmm. There were other Thanksgiving games, but this is the one I remember the most because you know, I remember we were beating them, and they had just won the Super Bowl the year before, and I had the defense huddle on the sidelines, and we were going to have to punt the ball back to them, and that's when they had Troy Aikman and some really good players, and I was going over 2 minutes.
Right. And
their little return guy from Miami, I forget his name, went back about 50 yards, caught on about the 10-yard line, was like Waddle, you know, going through everybody, and I said, we're going to play all this stuff to the 50-yard line, and then when they cross the 50, we're going to start playing this stuff. Well, he crossed the 50 on the punt return, so I said, you can cancel all the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, the best laid plans.
So there was like 9 seconds to go in the game, maybe 7 seconds, I don't know, and they had the ball on the 3-yard line, 4th and 3 at the 3, and they needed to score a touchdown to win. Might have been at the 5 or 6, I don't know, I can't remember. It was inside the 10. And they had Jay Novacek, tight end.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, we called timeout, or they called timeout, or their last timeout. And we're over there, and Belichick wants a blitz, and he never wants a blitz. And Antonio Langham was in this huddle, so he could verify this story. And, you know, our best thing that we played all season long was what we called Red 2. And we still play Red 2 here. It's just a pattern match, you know, kind of man thing that you get on people early in the red zone. And I remember Eric Turner was, you know, like a Pro Bowl safety, and they threw the ball to Novacek on a little out route, and he tackled him at the 1-yard line and knocked him back, and they couldn't stop the clock, and we won the game. So that was one of my best Thanksgiving Day stories that I can tell you. And one of the pictures that I see circulated sometimes of Bill and I are, us hugging after that game. And every time I see that picture, it reminds me of that game because I remember that moment, and this was probably 1994, maybe 1993. I don't know. It was a long time ago.
Yeah. That's right. Well, I'm guessing that a short week like that in the NFL has got to be, especially if you're having to travel, it's got to be a real booger bear.
Well, it is. I mean, but those guys are professionals, and I think they have experience and they have adaptability, and they really do a great job of preparing. I don't think people really have any appreciation at all. Most people think that these guys must be real arrogant guys and not really care, and they really care a lot because it's their livelihood, it's their job, and they're very professional about it. They really work hard for the most part at trying to get prepared for games, and when you have a short week, that sort of maturity as a competitor really has to kick in because you don't have time to go through everything with them.
Yeah.
And but we had some really good guys in Miami and Cleveland that were really veteran guys that could manage those kinds of disruptive times.
I hear you. Coach, we have a young lady standing to your right with the first question from inside the restaurant tonight. Hello, ma'am. Good evening.
Thank you. Hey, Coach. Now that Mac has 2 games as a starter under his belt, how has his preparation been this week, and how valuable is it to have someone like Tua help him along in the whole process?
Well, I think that it's been very good for Mac, first of all, to play with someone like Tua for this amount of time. I think you see a lot of things and learn a lot of things from the guy that's playing ahead of you. And some of it is because the guy ahead of him was a really good leader and set a good example and was somebody that he could emulate in a lot of ways. And I think that's helped his growth as a player. I think now the experience that he's gained in 2 games has certainly helped his confidence. And I think it's probably helped the confidence of the players that play with him. But I think one of the most important things in this game is the players around him need to play well. They have a good defensive team, very good front, and they cover a lot of man-to-man type things. So for our guys to get away from man-to-man, because the windows are going to be smaller where you have to throw the ball, help him make the kind of decisions that he needs to make so that he can play well. It's going to be important for the guys around him to play well. And, but he's had a good week, to answer your question, and I think he's pretty confident now, and I think he's got his, he's in the right place mentally, which has always been an important thing with Mac, which goes back to confidence, experience, maturity, which all those things he has gained throughout the course of this year by playing and being behind a guy like Tua.
Yeah, you talk about, obviously the wide receivers are so good, they get a lot of attention, but how about Najee Harris? He's now gone 3 games in a row with a passing touchdown, receiving touchdown, and a rushing touchdown. It had been 20 years in the SEC since one player had 3 games in a row with a receiving and a rushing touchdown. He's just running hard. He's running nasty, and it's wonderful to watch.
Well, he is. He's played really, really well. He's a guy that, as this season has gone on, he has gotten better and better and better every week. And I think a lot of it, he's always been a very talented guy, but a lot of it is, sort of challenging that ability where you get most out of the plays.
Right.
And understanding, the blocking. And, people don't understand that every runner has a landmark, where they're trying to run to start the play. And that landmark is geared toward, where the blockers are going to be when you get to a certain point at the line of scrimmage, because you're actually bringing the defensive players to the blockers, and if you don't hit those landmarks, you make it really difficult for your offensive linemen.
Sure.
And I think that's why our running game has improved some, and Najee's production has certainly gone up. He's always been a great receiver, and he's a good blocker, and he's become a really, really effective runner. And he's strong and hard to tackle, and I think people get tired of tackling him. So all those things, make him pretty special.
Indeed so. Coach, our first phone call of the night, you know where it comes from. Pee Wee down in Grand Bay, Alabama. Sponsored by Alabama 811. Always contact 811 before you dig to know what's below. Call 811 or visit al811.com. Pee Wee, what's on your agenda for Thanksgiving tomorrow? What you got going on?
Headed over to my sister's house to hang out with family and watch a little football.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Pee Wee, I really thought you would be the type that would cook. That you would be the cook, you would be the guy having everybody over to your house, that you would be just, I mean, you just seem like that type of guy to me.
Well, I do for some things, Coach, but this one's tradition. We've always had it over at my sister's, so that's just kind of, we just keep it going that way.
Well, that's good, though.
Yeah,
I think family traditions are great.
Coach, I want to ask a little bit along the lines of what y'all have been talking about for the offensive line and the way that they have to play. What are some of the things that LSU does with their front four and their front seven, whether it's blitzes or stunts or anything like that, that maybe we haven't seen or before, and just how does that work for them?
You mean
Auburn or LSU?
You said LSU.
No, for Auburn.
Yeah, you mean Auburn, yeah. Okay, well, I think that one thing about Auburn is they don't, until third down, they've got really, really good players. I mean, these two defensive linemen they have are probably as good as anybody in the country, and they're really hard to block. So they don't do a lot of stunts and blitzes and pressures on regular downs being first down, second and 7 or less, what everybody would consider a run pass down. They don't do a lot of stunning. They mix up their coverages a little bit. They mix up their fronts a little bit, but they're going to play the blockers and get off the blocks, and you better hit your landmarks, and you better get your hat in the right place. You better get your hands in the right place, and you're going to have to work to finish on them because they have initial quickness. They strike you up front. They use their hands well, and they can disengage and get off blockers really well. So the challenge for the offensive lineman is who's going to win those battles. And I think that when you get to third down, and they create a lot of third down situations because they're hard to run against. They play probably more man-to-man coverage than what we've seen for the most part through most teams. They get a lot of third down situations, and then that's when you get a lot of pressures, and you get a lot of, different kinds of looks up front that is going to be very challenging for the offensive line. Mixing and matching people, standing up different people, changing fronts, even, odd, whatever. Kevin does a really good job of that stuff. And that's going to be a challenge. Third down will be a challenge to be able to block because now you got good players and you got schemes that, you got to be right on or you're going to turn people loose.
Thank you so much, Pee Wee, for calling in. Coach, we've got a question from the AL.com Nick Saban Show blog. And I'm going to preface this by saying that Will in Arab, Alabama, doesn't want you to give away any trade secrets, obviously, but he wants to know if there are, in football, some particularly good offensive calls that you can make to negate an aggressive defensive line like Auburn's. He doesn't want to know what they are, but do they exist? And there's our question. Thanks, Coach, and roll Tide.
Well, I think what it comes down to is, there's really 3 ways you can block up front. You can man block, you can zone block, or you can gap block. I mean, that's basically it. And every play in football comes down to one of those types of plays.
Right.
And for the people out there that played football, everybody ran a power play. It means you double team somebody and somebody else pulls. That's a gap play. All right, when you have a man to block and everybody's got a man to block, that's man blocking. And then when you zone block, everybody's taking tracks, and whoever shows up on that track, that's who you block. So which one of those work best against these kind of players? I think it's probably a combination of all the above to try to keep them off balance. Because when you have really good front guys, what they do is they're playing let's just say I'm going to call it a 3 technique, which means you're playing the outside half of the guard. Well, when you control that gap and you penetrate that gap, you declare the runner is going to run someplace right away. All right, so now the linebackers, the guy's got to make a cut so the linebackers can jump quickly to where they're supposed to be, and you don't have time enough to get to those guys to block them. And that's what having a dominant defensive line can do for you. And this is probably one of the better ones that we faced all year. So it's going to be a real challenge for the offensive line. So
it is.
I'm not saying that there's any particular way to block. I think if you execute those 3 things well, you'll probably have some success, but it's going to hinge on the execution, not on the actual scheme.
Coach, we were just talking since Pee Wee called in and talked about the offensive line. I had mentioned that the Bama offensive line, a semifinalist for the Joe Moore Award, and we were just discussing how watching this group mature and gel over the season, and Jedrick playing so well, and Deontay and Dickerson, the whole bunch, it really has, they have, I don't want to say light years, but they have come significantly along since the opening games against Duke and New Mexico State and so on.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about the fact, we mixed and matched people early on at different positions because, Landon was new, whether he's going to play center or guard. Deontay wasn't there for 4 games. But once those guys settled in, and, we play a lot of different combinations of guys up there because you always want to get the best guys on the field if somebody goes down. But at the same time, when they play together, I think that's very, very helpful because they have to communicate. It's almost like playing in the secondary, Those 2 positions have to communicate more and play well together with each other to be able to get their job done effectively. And I think this has been a real key to those guys this year being able to continue to improve.
What else is on your mind, Cecil?
Well, since this week is a little different format because of the holiday, and wanted to I'm going to include 2 questions. Last week against Western Carolina, I don't know that I've ever seen the entire defensive line, everybody with experience, be out. And it was almost like watching, not from a talent standpoint, but from an experience standpoint, a JV line, all freshmen out there. And so I was curious if there was any update on DJ Dale, Raekwon Davis in particular, and also if you ever coached the JV team when you were coming up as a coach.
When I coached at Syracuse, we used to have freshman games, 5 freshman games. So each one of us had to coach the freshman team. And I'd only been coaching for 2 years as a GA, 2 years at Kent State, and then my first year at Syracuse, so my 5th year coaching, but really 3rd year being full-time. Right. And a lot of people in the Northeast ran the wing T. I never seen the wing T in West Virginia, and I never saw the wing T all the time I was at Kent State. All right, so now I got to coach the freshman team against the wing T at Cornell.
Goodness gracious.
I got no idea. I can't remember many of the players that were playing it, but I can assure you that they're walking around now saying he didn't know a damn thing about the wing T.
Yeah. we taught him everything he knows. Yeah.
That's great. And are at least some of the experienced guys, do they have a chance to be back this week?
Yeah, well, first of all, you make a good point because I think we had 3 players out for this game. But we also had 1 out before this game. Yep. So we had 4, LeBrian Ray, Phil Mathis, Raekwon, and DJ Dale. So we had 4 defensive linemen who did not play in the game that were all starters to start the season. Well, furthermore, if you took out 24 and 33, the 2 outside backers, there wasn't 1 guy in the interior 5 that started the season as a starter who was playing in the game. Both linebackers were gone, and all the down guys, and the first backup in the game. So, but it really was good for a lot of those guys to be able to play. And a couple guys, and this was, a real positive for the redshirt rule, which I think was what it was intended to be, that you could play in 4 games. It should be just as a freshman and not be used to gain extra years down the road and for guys to not do what they're supposed to do for their team when they're a junior or senior. But we actually could play 2 players in the defensive line who hadn't played all year, and it's not going to cost them the redshirt year. Yeah. And it was a good experience for them, and it was very helpful in their development. And I think that was the spirit of the rule when we started this. You could play in 4 games. So, and those guys did a pretty good job in the game. Now, I know probably the players they were playing against were not what they would play against in the SEC, but they did a pretty good job. They did a good job all week in practice, and they played pretty well, and that experience will be very valuable to them in their development in the future. And I have never been in a situation where you had that many guys injured and all new players playing. Sure. But I think Raekwon has been able to practice. Phil Mathis has been able to practice. I don't know if DJ Dale, he's tried, but he hasn't done a lot, so he's still pretty questionable. So those two guys, you know, we have a chance to get back. And LeBron Ray is still not practicing from the injury that he had all the way back in South Carolina. So, you know, we're still a little light, but, you know, getting better.
There was something that happened after the game. You probably didn't see it. You were in the locker room. But we commented on the air. The number of players from Western Carolina who came back out onto the field to get their pictures taken inside of Bryant-Denny Stadium, standing near the logo at midfield, leaning on the goalpost, standing there with their phones, just taking panoramic shots of the stadium. We're all so blessed. We're very close to it, obviously. We're there all the time. But it really was impactful, and I shared it with our listeners, how these kids, they had just gotten, you know, beaten fairly significantly, but they were, it was 20, 30 minutes, they're still out there taking pictures because they had a chance to play at Bryant-Denny Stadium. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think playing, and it's great that you bring that up, but, you know, playing at a place even like Kent State when I was a player. We played North Carolina State, we played Pitt, we played Iowa State. You know, we played some of those types of school, never an Alabama, never a Notre Dame or anything like that. But those are great memories. And, you know, for kids, those guys who work just as hard as our players, they try to win just as much as our players. They don't have a chance to get in the playoff. They don't have some of the opportunities that our players have had in the past that we probably take it granted for, you know, kind of take it for granted. And this is a big thing for those guys to have an opportunity to compete at a place like this. It really is what every one of them grew up dreaming to be able to do.
Yep.
You know, is to play at a place like Alabama or Notre Dame or USC or whatever. All right, and you know, they weren't maybe good enough to do it, but they've been very committed to being as good as they can be, and they'll never forget the opportunity that they had to play in that game. And
Exactly.
you know, that's one of the things that I hope people understand about me. I didn't want to score any more points. You know, when we had 59, I didn't want to score any more when we had 52. Because you know, it's those kids have pride, and they have a mom and dad, and they have, you know, I just don't feel good about humiliating somebody else, because it's a special experience for them to be able to play against us.
But they really enjoyed it. I think it was great to watch those young men out there after the game. Let's go to Hayden, Alabama. Coach, we have Jay on the phone. Jay, welcome to the show. Hello.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
Good, Jay. How are you?
Great, Coach. Nice to talk to you again.
Well, good to talk to you.
I was going to have a question about directional punting. Do you worry about shanks when you have a great punt return that you're facing? And then when it does happen, and I think it will, when it goes to an 18 playoff, would you like to see the top four have the first round be a home game, and then, you know, play it like it is now, the semifinals being in the bowl game?
Right. You know, I never thought about that before. I'm just kind of reevaluating and reassessing my whole theory on the playoffs and the bowl games and all those things, which I'm going to not comment on until after this season is over, at least,
Sure.
to restate my position. Which, you know, my position has always been the bigger the playoff, the less important the bowl games. And now I think that people are starting to realize that, and that's with 4 teams. So now when you go, can anybody even know who won bowl games last year or who played in them? Nobody talks about them. And I think as time moves on, more and more players who don't get in the playoffs are not going to want to play in bowl games. Yeah. And that happened last year with several players. And that's probably not a good thing, but I understand it. So I think all those things you have to kind of sort of assess what playoffs mean and how we're going to have playoffs and bowl games coexist together. But anyway, to answer the other part of your
about
question.
Shanking a punt.
Right,
when
on
you're kicking away from a
directional
guy.
punting.
Yeah.
Look, we directional punt not to kick away from the guy, whether it's kickoff or punt. We're actually kicking to create an advantage. We're kicking in a direction to create an advantage for how the cover guys are going to cover. So everybody knows where they're going to release, and we're going to have, like when we punt the ball, we may be trying to punt it to the right. Well, everybody knows we're going to punt it to the right. All right, the protection is geared toward it. The way everybody has to block is geared toward it. And everybody's going to expect that punt to go to the right because we want to have 4, 8, and 12 lanes. And then we want to have 3 ball guys. 3 guys are going to the ball, all the time. So we got 3 ball guys, and then we got 4, 8, and 12 lanes that they have to figure those lanes out. Not I'm the first guy, so I'm going to be the 4 guy. The second guy, I'm going to be the 8 guy. The third guy, I'm going to be the 12 guy. It's who gets out quicker.
Right.
The first guy out becomes the 4 guy. The second guy out becomes the 8 guy. The third guy out becomes the 12 guy. And that's how you form your lanes, when you're punting. So if you're doing that and everybody's releasing to the right and the punter kicks a ball to the left, you're really distorted. So it's not about kicking the ball away from the returner. You're really kicking it in a direction so you can create an advantage in your coverage. We do the same thing when we kick off. We kick off in a direction. Well, everybody knows we're going to kick left to left. So we want the ball to be kicked somewhere by the numbers on the left. But the whole coverage pattern, if you watch the guys running down the field, they're twisting and turning, and guys are pulling out and looping, and we're spilling balls off of blockers relative to the ball going there.
Sure.
And if the ball doesn't go there, you're very distorted. But that's why it's important to have good specialists who can kick the ball with accurate direction. Because when you don't, you have problems. You create problems for yourself. Now, if you want to kick the ball away from a returner, you want to get him to line up right and kick it left, your team better know it's going that way because they have to cover that way.
Sure. Coach Saban back with us here on stage at Baumhauer's Victory Grill in Tuscaloosa. So, Cecil, jump on in, my friend.
Coach, I have a obscure rules question or rules enforcement question. I don't know what exactly. As more teams play tempo offensively, try and go fast. Y'all try and go fast sometimes, and so there seems to have been an epidemic of 30-second injuries of defensive guys who probably were about to come out on that play anyway, who suddenly fall down to the turf. You've had at least one opponent your team doesn't do it very much at all that I've seen, but
No, we have not done that.
at least one opponent did, and I saw a game, a non-SEC game this weekend where one team literally did every other play almost, trying to slow down, and it worked. And the officials never called delay. Or does that? First of all, what's your feeling on it? Because y'all never do it, and then how can it be enforced where that's not in the spirit of play? I don't think.
No, I think you're exactly right. I don't think that. Well, there's 2 parts of this. First of all, when a player says he's injured, it's very difficult for anybody to dispute that.
Yeah.
All right, and you put the officials in a really, really difficult circumstance. Even if the guy, like I saw a guy do it the other day, he walked, like 20 yards across the field and then just went down. And they came out and did the trainer thing and all that, and then he went out of the game and they slowed the game down. But even at that, if that player says he's injured,
How do you know?
you cannot dispute the fact that he is or isn't injured. Now, that's one part of it. So if a player goes down, I'm never going to dispute the fact that he's injured or not injured. Is it in the spirit of the game? I don't think so. I don't think it's good for the game to fake an injury if that's in fact what somebody is doing or somebody is being told to do by a coach, to slow the game down to try to create an advantage or a disadvantage. I don't think that's sort of, we still, I know we want to win games, but we still have kind of a responsibility and obligation to teach values, how how do you do this? How do you play? How do you compete? You know, with sportsmanship, with class, with respect for the other players, and the rules of the game. You know, the game was intended to be played, you know, this way. I'm just the opposite. I get mad at our players when they lay on the field. I tell our players, if you lay on the field, you're telling the other guy he's kicking your ass. That's what you're telling the other guy. If you just lay out there on the field, that's what you're telling the other guy. All right? I mean, so is that what you're trying to do? I mean, you're laying on the field, the guy's standing right there you're playing against, and you're telling them,
all right, you won.
You won. You're wearing me out.
I can't keep
all right, now you jump up and run off the field, and you're ready to go back in 2 plays. I mean, how really hurt were you? I mean, I'm just the opposite of all that.
Yeah.
Now, I don't ever question when a player's hurt. I don't tell them, you know, I expect you to get up and run off the field no matter what. Even though when I played, you know, I broke my ankle and my leg and ran off the field because our coach said, you can't lay on the field. You can't let the other team know that they're beating you. You can't tell them that. You can't. So I got up and ran off the field.
Then you started.
Was that dumb or what? It was dumb.
But that's the way they did it.
But I do think, you know, there's a psychological component to all that. That, you know, you actually have to weigh, is this worth doing to let the other team know that what they're doing is actually wearing you out.
Yeah.
So that's why we don't do it, because I don't. Now I do tell our guys, which is different, is if they're going fast and you are hurt, you need to don't try to get off the field. All right, because we can't substitute for you if they're going fast. And if they didn't sub, there's no rule to protect us from that. In other words, guys hopping off the field and we got to put somebody in for him and he doesn't get off the field, we're getting a flag for 12 guys unless they subbed. And if they didn't sub, then you're out of luck. So if a guy does get hurt now, you have to tell him, don't get off the field because you're going to be in trouble. So I don't know. I think that I've actually, you know, and we create tremendous advantages for ourselves by going fast sometimes. So there's advantage in that, no question. All right, but I do wonder sometimes if it's in the best interest of players that you let them go fast, because guys get tired. When they get tired, they're more apt to get injured, and when you play more plays, you're more apt to get injured. So, you know, where some of these fastball teams run 90 plays in a game, I mean, it's average to go about 65.
Right.
All right, so now you're asking a player to play 25 more plays than what he usually does. I mean, what's the cause and effect of that in terms of the player's best interest and player safety?
Yeah, you multiply that over 12 games or so if you're playing a fastball team constantly, and it's a ton of extra plays. We're going to come right back. We've got the coach's final word just around the corner. You're listening to the Nick Saban Show on the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield IMG College. Coach Saban is with us, and now it's time for his final word, presented each and every week by Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing.
Well, you know, this is kind of a season in a season. You know, this last game, playing a rivalry game, playing against a good team. There's a lot on the line, as maybe it should be. And it's not going to be about, you know, everybody's going to want to win. It's about what are you willing to invest to win in terms of what did you do in preparation, what have you done all year, what have you done this particular game, this particular week to get yourself prepared to play 60 minutes in the game, to do a great job of executing. You know, when you practice well, you usually play well. And I think that's something that we pointed out last week, you know, in the game. We had some guys play really well in the game, and we had some guys that didn't play up to par, but they didn't really practice all that well the week before either, because, you know, they didn't respect the opponent like they should. I think everybody has respect for this opponent, and everybody wants to win. But what are you willing to invest in terms of to get what you want out of this game. And it's going to be a tough game, and we need all the help that we can get, and we need all of our players to contribute and support each other and play the best game they played all year, and we need our fans to help us as well.
Amen to that. Coach, what's your day looking like tomorrow? Is there practice in the morning, then you're getting a lot of folks together for Thanksgiving dinner?
We moved practice up a little bit tomorrow so that guys can, get out a little earlier, and then, the guys that live in we say a 2-hour radius can go home, be with their family. Some guys' family comes here. All the players who aren't with family go to Coach's house. And I think last year we had 32 players at our house. I think we kind of ran out of place settings, but we enjoyed each and every one of them. And we'll have a bunch there tomorrow, and we look forward to it every year.
That'll be great. And listen, let me thank you for your time. What is normally a Thursday night gathering, tonight on Wednesday, but this season has flown right by, and it's been great having you with all of our listeners and all the fans here on these Thursday night Nick Saban shows, and we look forward to talking again, Lord willing, a number of times during the postseason.
Well, I really appreciate you, Eli, for the great job that you do on this, but also all the media guests that we have. And I have a special respect for Cecil, and he's one of the guys that I always read because I'm interested to hear, what his thoughts are, because he's so professional and not one of those guys just trying to see how many hits he can get on whatever you guys have.
Whoever hits you.
And so there's a real respect for, the professionalism that he has. And I want everybody to know I enjoy this. This is one of my favorite things to do all week. This is the first time each and every week when I come here on Thursday that I see any human beings other than what I see in our building or on our team. Yep. That's the truth.
Yeah.
I don't see any other human beings.
Yeah.
All right, and I'm happy to see all you all. And I'm happy to share with you so that you understand, what we're trying to do as a program, even though I know all the fans, I just want to win games. But what we're really trying to do as a program and how we're trying to create value for our players. So this is something that's fun for me, and I appreciate your interest because you make it fun. So thank you very much. And have a happy Thanksgiving.
Definitely. Coach, you take care. Thank you so much. Cecil Hurt from the Tuscaloosa News. We thank him, as the coach just said.